Donald Trump has been announced as Time Magazine's Person of the Year.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, it's Person of the Year.
Thank you very much. This is an honor.
43 times. That's how many times Donald Trump has graced the cover of Time, one of the world's most influential magazines. Only Richard Nixon, with 55 covers, and Ronald Reagan, with 46, surpass him. The number becomes even more striking when you consider that his first appearance was as recent as 1989. No one could have predicted that this New York real estate mogul would go on to become the subject of some of the magazine's most memorable and controversial covers. But unlike them, Trump's covers often aim to tear him down, depicting him melting in flames, drowning in chaos, or threatening democracy itself. Despite this, Trump achieved the unthinkable, turning the magazine that tried to end him into one that now crowns him the most influential person of 2024. On January 16th, 1989, Trump made his first appearance on the cover of Time. Back then, he was an ambitious real estate developer from New York, known for his Atlantic City casinos and the recent release of his book The Art of the Deal. The cover featured him holding an ace of diamonds against a dramatic black and red background. This man can make you feel envy or just plain disgust. Boasting is his game, and Trump is his name, the headline proclaimed. Even then, the cover portrayed him as a business showman who elicited both admiration and disdain, an image he had carefully cultivated. It would be 26 years before his next appearance on the cover. On August 31st, 2015, Trump was no longer just an eccentric businessman, but the surprising frontrunner in the Republican primary polls. Deal With It declared Time in bold red letters over a formal presidential-style portrait. The message was clear: this man, dismissed by many as a joke, had become a political force that could not be ignored. And that was just the beginning. As Trump climbed in the polls during the Republican primaries,
Silent majority is back, and we're going to take the country back.
Time began dedicating increasingly critical covers to him, shifting from subtle irony to open condemnation. On January 18, 2016, a black and white cover showed him standing with his back to the camera before a crowd, a classic populist image with the title, "How Trump Won," followed by the ironic subtitle, "Now he just needs the votes." 2 months later, on March 14th, Time featured an extreme close-up of Trump with a checklist of traits: bully, showman, party crasher, demagogue, 45th president unchecked. But that final point was more than just a critique, it was a warning. Each word was carefully chosen to construct a disturbing psychological profile. Bully referred to his penchant for personal attacks on critics and opponents. Showman highlighted his television background and ability to turn politics into spectacle. Party crasher pointed to his hijacking of the traditional Republican Party. And demagogue, perhaps the most serious accusation, framed him as a politician who exploited fears and prejudices for personal gain. Yet, the most telling element was that unchecked final box 45th president. It was a prediction presented as a terrifying possibility a future Time suggested could still be avoided. Then came the October 2016 cover, the iconic total meltdown. The image featured a stylized depiction of Trump's face melting in shades of orange and yellow against a black background. It was Time's response to the crisis engulfing his campaign after the release of the infamous Access Hollywood video. This time, the magazine seemed to predict, or perhaps hope for, Trump's ultimate collapse. However, history had other plans. Just 2 months later, Time was compelled to name Trump its Person of the Year 2016. The cover portrayed him seated in a throne-like chair, gazing over his shoulder, with the subtitle "President of the Divided States of America." The division wasn't just rhetorical. Trump had won the Electoral College with 306 votes to Hillary Clinton's 232, but had lost the popular vote by nearly 3 million. So had Time reconciled itself with the 45th President of the United States? Not even close. The accompanying article made the magazine's stance clear. For reminding America that demagoguery feeds on despair, and that truth is only as powerful as the trust in those who speak it. For empowering a hidden electorate by mainstreaming its furies and live streaming its furies. And for framing tomorrow's political culture by demolishing yesterday's. Donald Trump is Time's 2016 Person of the Year. It was recognition, not an endorsement, a reluctant acknowledgement of Trump's impact, rather than approval of his methods or message. The magazine was determined to criticize him from day one, and it delivered. Trump's first year in office inspired some of Time's most memorable covers. In February 2017, Nothing to See Here depicted him seated in the Oval Office as a storm raged around him, with papers flying and rain pouring in a vivid portrayal of the chaos marking his first 30 days, the Muslim travel ban, Michael Flynn's resignation as National Security Advisor over undisclosed contacts with Russia, and constant leaks from the White House. Subsequent covers grew increasingly critical. November 2017's The Wrecking Crew showed Trump as a wrecking ball smashing everything in his path. January 2018's Year One featured his silhouette with his signature hair engulfed in flames. Then came April 2018's Stormy, once again placing Trump in the Oval Office, this time partially submerged in water. The image was a direct nod to the Stormy Daniels scandal, following revelations that Trump had paid $130,000 to silence the adult film actress about an alleged 2006 affair. In June 2018, King Maine turned up the heat further. With the subtitle Visions of Absolute Power, the cover depicted Trump gazing into a mirror that reflected him as a monarch wearing a crown. The issue came in the wake of Trump's claim that he had the absolute right to pardon himself in the Mueller investigation and could end the probe at will. It was a direct critique of his authoritarian tendencies and apparent disregard for constitutional limits. July 2018 brought two devastating covers. Welcome to America depicted Trump looking down at a crying child, a scathing critique of his administration's family separation policy at the border. Meanwhile, The Summit Crisis featured a fusion of Trump and Putin's faces, reflecting the uproar following their controversial meeting in Helsinki. Times covers became a visual barometer of Trump's presidency. September 2018's In Deep showed him drowning at his desk. October 2018's The Wavemakers depicted him fleeing from a tidal wave of "I voted" stickers ahead of the midterm elections. The impeachment proceedings brought even more memorable imagery. In March 2019, Do They Dare featured a screaming peach, a clever visual pun on the word impeachment. By October, an explosive cover showed Trump's silhouette against a fiery orange background, symbolizing the chaos surrounding his presidency. By this point, it was impossible to ignore the dramatic editorial shift time had undergone since that first cover in 1989. What began as a nearly admiring fascination with an eccentric businessman had transformed into an unrelenting campaign of visual and editorial critique spanning more than 3 decades. Each new cover seemed sharper than the last, building an unprecedented visual archive of journalistic antagonism. The magazine's covers became a catalogue of warnings and condemnations. Trump was depicted melting, drowning, burning as an authoritarian king and as a threat to democracy itself. Time employed every visual resource at its disposal to send a clear message: Trump represented a danger to America's institutions. This editorial hostility became such a consistent feature that it turned into a hallmark of the magazine. In fact, every interview Trump gives to Time is accompanied by an extensive article packed with fact checks, debunking or correcting many of the claims he makes during the conversations. Aside from the iconic cover of Trump raising his fist after surviving an assassination attempt, one of the last issues before his 2024 victory depicted him in a golf cart careening out of control down a slope. Titled In Trouble, it was Time's reaction to his performance in the presidential debates against Kamala Harris. Once again, the magazine seemed to predict his downfall, and once again, it was wrong. On December 7, 2024, Time named Trump Person of the Year for the second time. The decision was not without controversy. Sam Jacobs, the magazine's editor-in-chief, defended it by stating that Trump, for better or worse, was the most influential person in the news in 2024.
The person of the year who, for better or for worse, had the most influence on the news in 2024 is Donald Trump.
The cover was sober and presidential, marking a dramatic shift in Time's editorial tone. This is someone who has achieved a historic comeback, Jacobs explained. He has reshaped the presidency and is redefining American politics. The contrast with previous covers could not have been starker. The magazine that had spent years portraying Trump as a threat to democracy now recognized him as an unprecedented political phenomenon. What is certain is that the now president-elect of the United States has always been obsessed with appearing on time. On his first full day as president in 2017, standing in front of a memorial for fallen intelligence officers, he boasted, "I've been on your cover like 14 or 15 times. I think we have the all-time record in the history of Time." At the time, he had only appeared 11 times and was far from Richard Nixon's record. Now, of course, he's much closer, and with his return to the White House, it's likely we'll see him on even more Time covers. After all, it seems the magazine has, in its own way, learned to embrace this controversial figure. Thanks for watching Faminatics.